Scorpio. We are in our Taurus season readings. Taurus season is here. Before we get into it though, all information to work with me one-on-one is below, as well as the extended versions to these readings, which I think are well worth it. There's so much more that comes out. I would argue to say that they are even more than the first, because the energy is focused together on the cards, and I think that's why a lot of readers do it. But I still like to give this initial beginning. So what you may find this month, that a lot of your efforts, a lot of your energy, a lot of your time has been spent doing in general. Whether it's doing what you like, what you've been working towards, if it's just some kind of work, whatever it is, you've been focused on the doing. You've been focused on, and head has been down, perhaps more than you've realized, whether it's from not being able to even consider changing what you're doing, not even be able to consider what that could look like. You know, it could just start from visualizing that. It doesn't literally necessarily have to be, that you're completely altering your life. But I think what you could be scared of looking up at, or what you're being kind of, in a way, persuaded, moved to take a look at and be really clear about it, is your future. What you've learned and how you want to now put it into action. What you've gained even more in the past year. What you are confident in saying, and what's been spoken to you, whether through someone who is what you would consider to be younger than you, but still says things that make you feel like you see you. You know, even through our insecurities, we want to be seen, and it can even be hard to be seen in that matter when you're finally ready. Because now you're seeing that you're not hidden and you're not translucent. You are transparent in ways, but you're not translucent. You're a person. You're a whole person. Yes, you have venom. Yes, you have a stinger, but you're still a person, and people see you just as you can see them sometimes. This could be someone who you need to hear things from, and vice versa, because there's a lot that you are going to need to say, a lot that you're going to say and also do at the same time. The ways in which you are handling your responsibilities, where you no longer can commit to things to words when you're unsure, where you can no longer just accept that from yourself. It's possible that there are people in your life that also aren't accepting that from you anymore, as maybe putting up some boundaries or saying like, hey, I think things are shifting, like our values may be shifting, whatever it is. I think you're going to be a lot more forthcoming. I think that this part of you is amplified by what you've been resisting to move on. It's not even resisting. Let's pull back on that, actually. What you've been guided to. Yeah, the eclipses move things and, make shit happen and change what ultimately was going to change anyway, kind of like a tower moment. But it's only specific for everybody. And then what the full circle comes when they finally move out. That's when the other side wraps up. It's not just the double symbolic signs that have these dual natures. Everybody does to their own extent. Everybody does. That's my belief. So you've gotten a very roundabout yet straightforward answers about how things end, how things have ended, how things have begun. Even if you don't feel like, okay, so if you feel like you made in the moment the right decision, maybe a year and a half ago or so, and then maybe halfway down the road, you're like, why did I do that? Or where am I? Like, what's actually happening? It may not be as funny, but it can be. It can be a little comical, but you're kind of like, okay, so where am I? What's happening? Where am I going? And then all of a sudden, a year and a half later, you realize like, oh, this is what I thought I was telling myself, but all along I was just doing this. And now I'm bringing those things together. Those things are becoming equally as important. It's very clear that you also may receive some unprovoked advice because it wasn't meant to be advice. It was just meant to be someone's opinion or something someone said. Maybe you walk by it. I don't think it's just a walk by. I do think this is a very straightforward interaction where you hear something so strongly and it moves you to not only start to embody that, but it moves you to a point where you can see in yourself where possibly that was lacking in you, or maybe that belief. And now you have a different choice. Now, similar to Taurus, I was telling them a little bit, is like you can treat yourself now how you wanted to be treated then. And then the energy does change, the energy does heal. Those things heal themselves, especially emotionally, but you have to give it time. Or equal time to equal death and that depth. So if you give yourself the safe space to feel something deeply, you can ultimately shift something. But usually that means that you are so ready to be so aware of this particular thing that could be an umbrella for many other things, for sure. And what you're going to notice, especially by the end of the season even, is that even though it felt uncomfortable because it felt like, or at times that it could feel uncomfortable, could even feel really hot, like you're even in a sauna or a light, like you have the spotlight or the direct interrogation light on you. You're just going to realize that that's possibly how you've been treating every situation within yourself, but you don't need to do that. And you don't need to also avoid yourself just because you think, or possibly you're afraid of being interrogated by yourself. It could just simply be that you notice something. It doesn't have to hold and be held to that every time. Because at the same time, it is. It's just in different words. It's just in a different feeling, perhaps. And therefore you then recommit to this idea or this strategy, ultimately, this action of not just saying something even to yourself for temporary relief, but being honest with yourself, because the more that you are and can shed light, the more potent this whole part of you and this whole movement is becoming, this wholeness that is happening. You have an opportunity here. You have creation on your side. You have everything you need in order to go through this last part. For those people who are for even if you're a Scorpio, just watching for this part of yourself, it's a good idea, because this recognition, even with people that that can be similar to you, is so profound. Because you don't have to necessarily disassociate or separate yourself. It's not that. It's giving yourself a moment to hold yourself in a space where you weren't held that way, because that could even sound foreign to you. But really, it's just someone not seeing and hearing you, which is holding you, ultimately, and caring for you in a moment of vulnerability, in a moment when you really need it. Because you may not even know what the words are until you hear what the other person says. You're like, oh, wow, that's exactly what I needed to hear right now. Like, wow, you're here. And I needed to hear that. Thank you. And maybe you do thank that person, but then you thank that part of yourself. You know, it can sound so silly, but thanking yourself and giving yourself appreciation is a big part of what can leave you or a person feeling left out or not a part of anything, whether or not they want to be. But if you do something in a community-based place, of course, or even at a job, there's still, ultimately, I think that there's this part of us that always wants to be connected to a certain extent. So that's something that can be cultivated in this time of this sincere strength. You have this sincerity, which can be overused, like truly. Like, do you really mean that? Like, truly? Like, yeah, literally. You know what I mean? Like, if we just use it too much. But yeah, no, sincerely here. You are sincerely taking accountability for yourself in a way that is only going to do good for you, because now you don't have these shadow subconscious situations just showing up in your life over and over again, because you're addressing it more internally. That's how this, if you want to call it a simulation, universe, whatever you want to call it, that's how this works. That's how this works to an extent. It's not so simple, but it can be more simple. And, you know, the stars kind of back it up too. The eclipses are only here to help you maybe evolve in the ways that you need to. You see what you need to see in order to come closer to yourself, to source, to your purpose. I think it's all extremely similar. And I think we should stop there. We'll go into the second part now, which will be in a link below. And I hope that you have a great rest of your season, Scorpio.